This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You are tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. We are maybe, 24, 25 games left in the regular season. But without there not being enough stuff happening in the association, you would almost felt like the season has just started. And it's just an exciting time as we start heading down the home stretch. March Madness is on the precipice. There's just a lot of basketball to be played and still a lot of basketball to be discussed. And I'm just excited to be able to be on a platform, to be able to share it with you all. And in order to do that, I always got to do it with my right-hand man, 50 grand NBA aficionado, Dime Mag contributor, right off one of the illest websites, www.shawsports.net. Big Kahuna and PNC, my brother from another mother, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Holla back at me, Mr. Shaw. What's that South Beach weather like, man?
And it's been hot. It's been nice weather down here for once.
Probably not as hot as the Portland Trailblazers, but that's another subject, right?
Not quite. We're not Damian Lillard hot right now. It ain't Lillard time down here in South Beach, but it's definitely been some nice weather. But more importantly, it's been some nice basketball on the hardwood that we've been taking note of. And I think from all angles and all regions, no matter where you're at. But as always, man, salute, and to all the fans, listeners of NBA Baseline, thank you for tuning in. Another great show lined up on tap for us here. We're excited to talk about it. We have some great topics and obviously another great guest to get to as well.
Definitely, man. Exciting show on the come up for you guys. In a little bit, we're going to have our man, David Deckard. He's the managing editor for Blazers Edge SB Nation. We're here to talk about that team that's not just dropping dimes, but seriously dropping W's on the opposition. David Deckard to help us discuss about the Portland Trailblazers. And hopefully he'll drop some knowledge for us on why the Blazers are doing what they're doing right now. Also, in our subject of the on our segment of the drop, two pretty great topics that we like to throw out there. Clearly, who do we think is the best backcourt combination in the NBA right now, outside of Klay Thompson and Steph Curry? And clearly, from what we've seen from the game this weekend, the Saturday primetime game between the Warriors and the Thunder, I don't think there's any question when you look at backcourt combinations who's basically running away with that mindset. But we want to talk about the guys that following up right behind on the footsteps, on the heels of our conversations of saying these guys are the next on to come up. So we can't wait to get into that discussion. And also kind of give our breakdown about a classic, instant NBA classic between the Warrior and the Thunder. This is definitely one of those type of matchups that you would hope and pray becomes a finals, a Western Conference Finals type matchup. We can't wait to discuss that. And of course, we got a coveted coast to coast covering the news and stuff happening in the association. Once again, we'd like to show our love and appreciation for all of our fans and listeners of the Baseline. Continue to show that love and support. Get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA, or get at me at GameFace Lee. But we always encourage you to get at the show's Twitter handle at NBA_the Baseline. Hashtag up the Baseline. Let us know who you are and what you're about. Available on all the major platforms, available on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Microsoft TuneIn, Player FM. So we encourage you to download any one of those platforms and allow us to be one of your go-to resources discussing all things NBA. And also, big shout outs to our peoples at Rabble TV. Be sure to go to www.rabble.tv. You can also catch the Baseline Live, where we air some of the topics that are happening in the now. And we have some great discussions, and we love chatting it up with all of you guys. So be sure to download Rabble, be a part of that community, and be a part of us as we continue to give you what you need as we start making our way towards the NBA playoffs. You know how we do, and you know how we like to set it off. It's time now for the breakdown.
Time to break it
down to the bone gristle.
Time now for the breakdown. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA Podcast. And with this, we have our man, David Deckard. He is the managing editor of Blazers Edge, and we're ready to talk about a Portland Trailblazers team that is seriously on a mission. David, thanks for joining us this week.
It's always a pleasure to be with you guys.
David, the first thing I got to ask you is, did you expect this kind of gameplay from the Portland Trailblazers? I mean, first of all, I'm sure it was surprising that they came in at 500 by the All-Star break, but to see what Damian Lillard is doing, to see what CJ McCollum is doing now, the second half of the season, to supplant themselves as one of the top 8 seeds in the Western Conference, did you see this coming?
Yes and no. Lillard's performance isn't entirely surprising, although it was a question coming into the season whether he would be able to handle the pressure of being the guy. McCollum had room in front of him. We knew he was going to have a breakout year. Didn't know it was going to be this good. I think the biggest surprise in that is the fact that they are fighting for playoff position. Some of that has to do with their recent schedule. Some of that has to do with the quality of competition in the lower bracket of the Western Conference and injuries as well. But it's still, you'll take it. And it certainly is above expectations for them to be talking about any kind of seed, let alone sitting right now in the 6th seed with their eyes on number 5.
When we talk about this team and how good they've been, I mean, you mentioned Lillard, and it starts with McCollum, and one of the best backcourt combinations in the NBA currently. But I think there's been consistency issues throughout. So I'm very surprised outside of those two guys that they have been as successful as it has been. Can you talk to us a little bit about, the different players that's been in the starting lineup and guys because Aminu had a good start to the season and he tailed off. Plumlee has played well. And he's been, again, somewhat consistent, but now, he's tailed up at sometimes too. Gerald Henderson was injured. Now he's starting to come on. How have they managed to be as good as they have been, despite only having 2 real guys to kind of carry them the entire season?
Well, I got 3 words for you. Terry freaking Stotts. I mean, he has designed a system that takes advantage of the gifts of his players. And the front court is limited in many ways, and yet each one of them has 2 or 3 things that they're supposed to do on offense. And the Blazers simply do not take bad shots. They don't get anybody looks out of their comfort zone. And when a guy catches the ball, he's expected to take the shot if he's open, and he's always in his range. So it's always a good shot. A lot of them fall. And the bailout option is simply get it to Lillard or McCollum for the 3 or let them create. And those are good bailout options. So you have the initial option is good with the guards. The middle option is good with a couple guys with limited offense, but who can do the things they do very well. And the bailout option is good too. So that offense has been looking great. The defense has been up and down, but that's to be expected. And, it's basically a case of the Blazers playing to their strengths and opponents letting them. Now, in a 7-game series, this can be different. When the team has time to prepare, they're going to be able to exploit Portland's weaknesses more. But during the regular season, on average, the Blazers actually do pretty well with that system.
David Deckard joining us here. Be sure to check him out at Dave Deckard. Dave, one of the things that I think has really stood out is, and you just mentioned the name, Terry freaking Stotts, right? So we're talking about all the great things. What is the one thing that you do wish you could see more of from Terry Stotts as he continues to coach what is not just a relatively young team, but an exciting team, but a very immature team in the winning process, given the turnover that's taken place for this team over a year ago?
Well, he's darn near perfect given where their team is in its learning curve. I think as they progress, they're going to need to take a little bit more advantage of their athleticism defensively. They do not have good shot blockers. They don't have intimidators in the middle. They can get away with that maybe if they force some more turnovers, take a few more gambles so that their lateral quickness shows on defense, because it's really better than most opponents. That's the thing the Blazers have. They're quick side to side and they can jump. And you just don't see that playing out on defense. They still play pretty much percentage defense, a little more help than they did with Robin Lopez in the middle in that veteran lineup, which was big and slow, but still not quite enough, I think, verve on that end of the court. And I think that they could make some hay doing that. But it's awfully hard to argue with this level of success right now. And frankly, they may need some better personnel in that front court before they can really excel defensively.
Well, David, I mean, I think, you always bring up a lot of valid points here. And one of the things that I'm very concerned about this, you mentioned a little bit earlier, when they get into a 7-game series, how hard or how high do you think they can climb in the Western Conference this year, given the fact that, yeah, the Western Conference seems to be a little bit weaker, and they figured out a way to kind of climb in the ranks here. But what is really the ceiling of this team right now? As you said, they've descended all the way to 6. How high can they really go?
Well, as far as seeding, I think that there are, 3 really good, maybe 4 good teams in the West. And the Blazers can't crack that. And I think the difference between the best teams in the West and the people in the bottom of the bracket should become pretty apparent in the first round. Now, the Blazers could sneak up on some people. I mean, they have a puncher's chance that with the 3-point shooting and that talent in the backcourt, they can win some games. If they won a series, I would be shocked. If they won 2 series, I would have a heart attack. I don't think it's possible. So I think that's their hard limit. Even in the fantasy world, getting to the second round would be the end of that fantasy. And I don't think they'll get out of the first round. I think everybody at the bottom half of the Western bracket will basically be backing in. It's not that you were that great. It's that you were the best of everybody else who was not very good. And the Blazers may be the best of the not very good teams, but there's a long difference between that and a top 4 seed or certainly the top 2 teams.
David Deckard joining us here. Check him out at Blazers Edge, www.blazersedge.com. David, the one thing that's really impressed me is Terry Stotts' usage of his team. You look at the way that he implements Myers Leonard, Myers Plumlee, even the emergence of Maurice Harkless is quite phenomenal. Can you talk about the supporting cast that the Portland Trailblazers has basically used to put themselves in the position that they're currently in? Sure.
I mean, Stotts, I believe, coaches on the yes principle, which is we're going to emphasize the things that you do well and allow you to do them rather than criticize you for the things you can't do. So, for instance, Aminu, he is not a good distance shooter except for in a couple of particular spots and when he's wide open. So they don't give him the ball and have him create. In fact, that's a disaster. Instead, what they do is they let the guards create and then toss Aminu the ball when he's wide open and when he's relaxed and can hit those shots. Myers Leonard had a lot of problems at the beginning of the season hitting 3-pointers. He was expected to hit a lot of them because he had that phenomenal percentage last year. This year, the bottom fell out. So what did they do? After a while, they adjusted. They got him in against second units where the defense wasn't as good. They also allowed him to step inside instead of shooting the 3. All of a sudden, he looks really good. So basically, what Stotts does is he's a master at discerning what his players can do and then putting them in the position to do it. And with everybody comfortable like that, the team looks pretty good.
So before I let you get out of here, is there a guy, I mean, I know, we've been losing a lot to Stotts really being able to put everybody in the right positions, but is there a third guy that needs to really step up for them for the rest of the season and for them to even have a chance in their first round matchup where they can really rely on that person? Who would you think that person would be? And not necessarily they have to be a scorer, but like you said, doing what they do well and doing it often. Who's that third guy that needs to step up behind Lillard and McCollum?
There are a couple candidates. I mean, you look for scoring at the backup shooting guards. Alan Crabb and Gerald Henderson have both excelled at different points in the season, and Crabb has even at times looked like a breakout star. So them hitting mid-range shots kind of is a little bit of spice in the Blazers offense. Also, Ed Davis can put in some phenomenal efforts, even turning a game with his rebounding. And I think that he is a hidden key to their success. That said, I don't think any of those players are strong enough to take them through a 7-game series. I think it's going to have to be Lillard and McCollum being phenomenal if they have a chance, and we'll see if that's enough.
The Portland Trailblazers are currently rolling right now as we speak on this podcast, 6 in a row, and definitely has a date with destiny with the ever-beloved Houston Rockets, and it'll be very interesting to see if they can continue this trend. But you can certainly make the argument, if there was ever a second-half MVP award to be given, Damian Lillard's name would be right on the precipice of discussion. David, we really appreciate you hopping on and discussing this hot team that's rolling out in the Northwest, the Portland Trailblazers, man.
It's a pleasure. Anytime, guys.
All right. You've been tuned to the Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was the breakdown. Time now for the drop. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA Podcast. First topic on slate for the drop. And Shaw and I, prior to the podcast, were mulling this over on how we wanted to implement the way we wanted to kind of carry out this topic of conversation. Because while it's clear cut, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are the best backcourt in the NBA. I think it's only fair that we start acknowledging guys that are following up right behind. I mean, it can't just be about Steph and Klay, even though what they're doing with the Warriors is phenomenal. The run that they're on, the possibility of breaking the NBA record of most wins in a regular season, all of that is great. But when we're talking about how great a team is going to be, it's only as good as your backcourt combination, what it seems like. And if we are going to entertain the idea of anyone being able to match with a Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, we've got to acknowledge the backcourt combinations that are just right behind them. So, Shaw, I want to get your take on who you feel is deserving to be the second, third, maybe fourth best, maybe even fifth best backcourt combination in the NBA as we speak for this season.
I mean, I think this is a great topic to get into, on the heels of, some of the even guard conversations that have been out there kind of looming. And I feel like John Wall and Bradley Beal, this was a conversation that came up maybe about a season or so ago where they felt like, okay, they were the best backcourt combination out there. And Beal's inability to stay healthy has kind of knocked him out of the running for even, maybe even second place, if you will. The combination to me that has made the most improvement and the most strides is a combination from a team that continues to surprise people in general. And I think the second best backcourt in the NBA right now today is Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan in Toronto. I just feel like, you have two all-stars in the Eastern Conference, two guys who really have learned how to play off each other. A lot of it has been the actual growth of both players. Lowry, lost all that weight over the summer, came back and really focused and distributing the basketball. DeMar DeRozan has improved his efficiency every single season and has become a more efficient scorer as a guy who gets to the free throw line on a regular basis. And DeRozan is starting to pass the ball a little bit as well, moving the ball and trusting his teammates. And that is also obviously the result of Toronto just having a better team in general. But I really feel like Lowry and DeRozan are probably second best. And my third right now today, I would actually pick Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum over John Wall and Bradley Beal. And that's just how I feel about it. I mean, there's obviously other people you can discuss. You can discuss a combination of Eric Bledsoe and Brandon Knight when healthy. But again, we're talking about a conversation that's in the now, and those guys aren't healthy. Goran Dragic, Dwayne Wade, another duo that you can consider. Someone you even consider maybe looking at Chris Paul and JJ Redick. Again, all those are valid arguments to me, but I feel like right now you're looking at 2, Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, and 3, Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, and then Wall, Beal, and then everybody else kind of falls in after that.
And Shaw, you can also even throw in Isaiah Thomas and Avery Bradley. Where do they fall in that pecking order? But I have to agree with you. And when we were having this conversation, it was hard pressed for me to not acknowledge the vast improvement of what CJ McCollum has been able to do. His improvement. I mean, clearly, he is in that conversation if he is not considered the most improved player in the NBA. And they do actually give it to Steph Curry because of what Steph Curry is doing is just absolutely ridiculous. But CJ McCollum in that little segment of that segue of how he's improved as that 2-guard position, to me, is indicative of why we're even talking about the Portland Trailblazers as being a top 8 team in the Western Conference. And while the gameplay of the Western Conference after the Spurs, after the Warriors, and the Thunder is all more so on a downward trend, I don't think we anticipated the Portland Trailblazers to play at the level that they're playing. And it's really because of Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. But the one reason, Shaw, that I think there's no question Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan are deserving to be the second best backcourt in the NBA is how much they've improved defensively between the both of you. When you look at the comparisons of the others that are behind them, I don't feel John Wall and Bradley Beal are as great defensive. The numbers may say differently, effective opposition field goal percentage and stuff. It looks deceptive, but I don't feel like that dynamic duo from an offensive and defensive perspective as a balance match up the same way that I'm looking at the combination of Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, and it's partly the reason why the Toronto Raptors and Masai Ujiri does not seem hell-bent on making major moves to change the crux of this team, because he understands where the heart of this team lies, and it's in this combination of these two. And if you look at what the Toronto Raptors are doing, they're on pace to probably break their single season record of wins in franchise history. And that to me says a lot for a team that we are always saying is probably going to get knocked out of the first round. It's hard to imagine the way that Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan has taken this team on their shoulders and have basically made them a legitimate contender, where they're now only a few games away from possibly even taking the top spot in the Eastern Conference against the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, and Toronto, again, they've had a great showing all year, and as you mentioned, listen, we don't want to have this conversation and just have it be about, okay, who scores the most points and things like that. I think it is to your point, really about, whose team is really progressing with them, kind of at the helm. And DeRozan and Lowry happen to have the second most points as a backcourt combination. Almost, I think 45 a game between the two of them. But nevertheless, that's not even what we're talking about here. It's really like just how they play off of each other and how they've actually this year really been able to stay on the court for the most part. What's really knocking Beal and Wall out of that conversation for the second spot is that Beal has been injured and has only played, I think, 36 games this year of the 58 or whatever it is that they've played.
But Shaw, but real quick, I want to get your thoughts about this. I mean, do you really think that that's mainly the reason why, because of the injury? Because when I look at this Washington Wizards team, this is a team that has been together for quite some time, right? With Bradley Beal, we're going to say like 2-3 years they've had this team. You look at the roster that the Washington Wizards have had. They've had Nene. They've had Marcin Gortat. They've had Paul Pierce. They had Otto Porter, right? Another first-round pick who clearly is someone that they are very high on, and he looks like someone that has a very high ceiling and can help contribute for this Wizards team. But what have the Raptors worked with? I mean, Jonas Valanciunas, they haven't even had DeMarre Carroll, and they've signed this guy to this big contract. He's not even nearly contributed for this Raptors team the way that we're seeing the expectations probably should have been, if we're talking about the Raptors being a team that this is finally going to have to be for them, that they got to get it done and things of that nature. I'm just wondering, how much credence are we giving to the idea that because Bradley Beal has not been fully healthy, that this would have had a factor in this backcourt combination really being the sole essence of us saying that they're the second best backcourt combination to the Washington Wizards? I just feel like Wall and Bradley Beal, as great as they are not making their team completely better. They look great, but they're not making their team completely better.
Yeah, I mean, I understand definitely where you're coming from with that, but the only caveat to what you're saying is, I would really look back at the beginning of the season. And remember, we started the season and there was a lot of controversy regarding Bradley Beal and his contract situation. And they didn't extend him. They didn't want to go ahead and just kind of give him, all right, you're our guy, we're going to give you a max contract. They didn't do that. His contract situation is still in flux. And he came out like a house on fire. He really was, for lack of a better phrase, he was their go-to scorer to begin the season. And it just kind of fell apart when he got injured. So I'm not saying that only because of his injury is why, Lowry and DeRozan are second best. It's not only because of that. It is a combination of how the team has played, and as a result of those two guys helping their team. But again, Beal he started off the season like he was going to be an all-star. Like I can't forget that, because I was just like, wow, he's really trying to prove a point now where he deserves his money. And he deserves to be considered one of the best shooting guards in the NBA. Again, it lasted all of 15, 20 games before he went down with those injuries, and then he was kind of in and out of lineup since then. But that was a major factor in the Wizards season, not alone even in this conversation, but in the Wizards overall season. And I agree. When I look at the rosters, both of them, Toronto and Washington, I really feel like, hey, they're pretty evenly matched kind of throughout, with the backcourts being the highlight of both of those teams. And remember, the Washington Wizards beat Toronto in a playoff series last year. But again, we're talking about what's going on right now. And I would definitely pick Lowry and DeRozan over Wall and Beal If I had to pick two guys, to run my backcourt combination.
You're tuned to the Baseline. Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Our segment of The Drop, discussing the best backcourt combination, the best backcourt duo in the NBA outside of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. All right, Shaw. So where would you have John Wall and Bradley Beal? Because while we've supplanted Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan as number 2, then there's that conversation about Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum being number 3, possibly. I'm pretty certain that that's where you were going. And then maybe John Wall and Bradley Beal. And let's keep this in mind too. This is on the precipice of John Wall saying that he believes that he's the 3rd best point guard, at least a top 3 point guard in the NBA. And I'm just kind of interested in where you feel with that, because, hey, what about Chris Paul and JJ Redick? I mean, they do have the LA Clippers, playing at a level where people have to actually be questioning, is Blake Griffin going to be good for this team when he comes back? Because everybody knows that this team, no matter what happens at the end of the day, they can only go where Chris Paul ultimately takes them. And you can see a guy like JJ Redick, his game has improved vastly playing next to a guy like Chris Paul and having a coach like Doc Rivers under his wing. Yeah,
the Clippers are an interesting situation simply because they really are supposed to be a amazing team in general. As a unit, that team is supposed to succeed. Especially with the starting lineup. Now, yes, Blake has missed half of the season as a result of the thigh and the hand injury and things like that. And Chris Paul and JJ Redick have definitely stepped up. But I feel like they don't do enough. Especially when it comes to what you were saying earlier. Where Lowry and DeRozan, they've learned how to defend in KC's system. And I think, again, they're not elite defenders by any stretch of the imagination, and they're passable. And I think Chris Paul, he's been considered, one of a stopper at some point, and he's been on all defensive teams a couple times as well. Redick has never seen such thing, but Redick's call to fame really was his defense. And they are a combination that I really do like from that side of things too. But I feel like their overall team is just, is good. And better maybe even so than some of the other combinations that we've talked about, that they are not the complete keys to the success of their teams as much as Wall and Beal are, even though Washington is struggling this year, and as much as Lowry and DeRozan are. I don't think Paul and Redick mean to as much as a duo to their team as the other combinations that we're discussing here. And then obviously on the situation with Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, again, I think they're right there. In terms of in that conversation, I would put them 3rd. I mean, they're averaging, I guess you'd average that would be 46 points a game. So actually, they're a little bit higher than Lowry and DeRozan as a backcourt points combination. And McCollum definitely had some time where he stepped in and was playing the point guard spot for Lillard and did a great job of that and carrying that team to kind of keep them in the running for things right now. Their overall percentages are pretty good too, and probably arguably, one of the best of the 3 that we're discussing here. But I definitely like, what you're saying with Chris Paul and JJ Redick. I think they're an underrated duo, and they're definitely not going to get the hype that they definitely deserve in this conversation. But I'm glad we're able to discuss them and shed some light on that situation for them.
Definitely, Shaw. Just out of curiosity, before we move to our next topic, who do you find to be the most disappointing backcourt combination?
That's tough for me. There's a couple candidates for me. I don't feel like the Spurs have gotten a lot out of their backcourt this year, and that's a lot because of Danny Green's had such a horrible season.
And yet they've got over 50 wins, right?
Yeah. I mean, and again,
the magic of pop.
Yeah. Look at that situation. I mean, how do you explain that? Parker has played a little bit better than he has in recent seasons, but Danny Green is having a terrible season from the floor right now. So they're a little bit disappointing to me. I'd also kind of look at that Orlando team and kind of say, well, should Elfrid Payton and Victor Oladipo be further along in the development? I think they had some good chemistry to begin the year, but then Oladipo got hurt and then was sent to the bench, and then he was coming off the bench for a good little while there. That's the same thing that happened to Payton a season ago. Now they seem to be back on the same page, but Orlando is definitely struggling as a result of it. And I'd even point back to a combination that I spoke about a little bit earlier in Goran Dragic and Dwayne Wade. I think Wade has held up his end of the bargain for the most part and stayed healthy.
But where is the Dragon?
But the Dragon has definitely has been missing.
Flaming out, man, just flaming out.
It's like Game of Thrones in this situation. You know, Khaleesi lost her dragon and had no idea where he went. That's how the Heat feel right now. That guy has not been consistent all season long. And despite some improved play recently, I feel like that's definitely a backcourt combination that I thought would be a little better. And one more that I want to point out too, I feel like, and this is really going to really kind of point out Monta Ellis here. I just don't know where his season has been. I just feel like George Hill and Monta Ellis should have been a better combination. Ellis, especially with his playmaking ability, he's really struggled at some points in this season too. And I felt like Indiana would have had a better time, you know, getting those two integrated and being a nice complement to Paul George. But it really seems like the front court is where Indiana is really starting to live instead of the backcourt with Ellis and Hill. Yeah,
listen, those are some great combinations that I really think kind of highlight partly when you look at where these teams are, minus the San Antonio Spurs. They are absolutely nowhere where they should be because of the play by this backcourt combination not playing up to the standards. And I'll throw one that's out there. And it's kind of surprising. I thought you would have thrown them out there first and foremost, but maybe because of the turmoil and all the other issues going on, the Houston Rockets, the combination of Harden and Beverly just baffles me. I mean, if nothing else, the reason why the Houston Rockets last year were where they were was because they played good defense. I mean, and even with James Harden, who plays Olé defense, the system allowed him to mask a lot of his defensive deficiencies. But this year, despite what James Harden is doing offensively, there's no excuse because he's not going to be in contention for MVP. But Patrick Beverly, I just feel like in some ways may have taken a step back. I don't feel that flow that these two guys have had. Could they possibly, if they were able to win basketball games and look better than what they've looked like, would they be in the conversation of being a top 5 backcourt combination because you had the balance of offense, defense with the two? But this Rockets team doesn't play good defense. And Patrick Beverly now becomes a liability because other than playing defense, what is he out there on the basketball court for? Especially if James Harden is your primary ball handler for the team. So I feel like there's a disappointment there in that regards, in that respect. But clearly, when you look at it across the landscape, maybe we're setting too high in expectations of where these other guys are going to need to be if we're measuring them up to Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Our segment of the drop. Really quickly, Shaw, last segment of the drop before we move on to coast. Man, what a game this past weekend between the Golden State Warriors and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Just proof positive that if there's anything that I want for Christmas, anything I want under the tree is an opportunity to see these two teams go at it in the Western Conference Finals if somehow, some way, they can't get past the San Antonio Spurs.
I mean, that was an instant classic. You really do have to kind of look at the landscape of the Western Conference and say, well, what the hell is going on here? Like, seriously.
There's a ton of things, Shaw, that I know that we can get into, that we can draw from this game. More than anything else, a lot of it stems from a lot of the quotes being given out by old school players like Oscar Robertson, Steven Jackson, with regards to Steph Curry and how the game is just, it's soft and Steph is just having his way because they're just, the defense is. The game this past weekend is proof that Steph Curry's game is on a level that it doesn't matter what era he would play in, he would be doing this anyway. There's something to be said about a player playing at a level that is beyond just the physical aspects of what the game is supposed to offer you. He is just playing completely. It's just absolutely mind-boggling to me the way Steph Curry is playing and how he steps up. And when it matters the most, he is not afraid to take the shot. Something that we beg for guys like Kevin Durant to do on a consistent basis, and things that we ask Russell Westbrook to recognize as a guard. Steph Curry is a combination of both of those guys right now, and he single-handedly beat the two players that we consider top 5 NBA players on the same team. Crazy.
Yeah, no, it absolutely was, and like I said, instant classic on in that regard. And I've said, I think I even tweeted out where I understand there's some hate for the Golden State Warriors because yeah, they like themselves a little bit. They celebrate.
Listen, I'd like myself too if I'm gonna play like this, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think
I'm be like that progressive box on steroids right now, man. Just seriously, like it's ridiculous.
And you see them, they do their thing, and again, they've earned the right to some degree, not to maybe show people up, and I don't think they're even trying to do that. I think that rap is tired and overplayed to some degree, but they go out there and they do their thing and they deliver. But like I tweeted last night, people don't like them right now. Some people don't like them right now because they went from being a nice story to being the story in the NBA right now. It's all about what they're doing, how they're playing, and what Steph is able to accomplish. What he's done on this road trip that Golden State has been on, it's just phenomenal. The guy's hit 23s in 2 games. I can't even explain or even understand the level of shooting this and just accuracy that he's been able to do in the entire season, and really has gotten better. A friend of mine even tweeted me, said, "Listen, yeah, he's the MVP, but I mean, at some point, really, we may have to start considering him for the most improved player as well. As much as we've said CJ McCollum, that's pretty much his award to lose, and there's obviously some other candidates as well, but Steph Curry is better. He's remarkably better than he was a season ago. And I think just because he's the MVP, people who don't feel like he can win an award such as the most improved player, but he really has gotten to that level right now. What we've seen, and even in that OKC game where they really gave their best effort and still were unable to close, and KD fouled out.
I got something about that one though.
Yeah, I just can't wait to see if they're able to match up again.
Championship mind state. Okay, this to me is the difference between even Steph Curry last year to what you're seeing from Steph Curry right now. Keep in mind, everybody is all glossy eyed because of the threes that he shot. Remember, like he tied the record of shooting, of making the most threes in a single game. But the thing that stands out more than anything, on the reason why, with more confidence, I will say that the Golden State Warriors will go ahead and win this NBA championship in that game in overtime. Okay, mind you, after Russell Westbrook did the drum line on Steph Curry's ankle, he proceeds to come back and score, I think, 28 of the 46 points he did in that second half that the Warriors needed to even get it to overtime and to win the game. But the one thing that stands out more than anything is that overtime, Steph Curry had Kevin Durant on a switch out on an island. Now, Steph Curry can razzle dazzle and shoot the 25, 26, 27-foot three-point shot if he really, really wanted to. But his basketball acumen and him understanding that he's playing on the road, he's playing with arguably the next best guy that everybody wants to see go to an NBA championship, win an NBA championship, basically, and Kevin Durant takes him one-on-one, drives to the basket, and forces him to get his 6th foul. You know how we talk about how do you defeat an army when you're outnumbered? You cut the head off the dragon. That's exactly what Steph Curry did. He knew in that moment, you take out Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook is not going to help this team win this basketball game. Nobody else on that Thunder's team is going to win that basketball game. That's what championship players do in moments like that. Rather than taking what feels comfortable, you do what's necessary to win that game.
No, I mean, I think that's a valid point. Definitely to some degree, Curry understands the moments, and KD understands the moments too, and just got caught in a situation where he was unable to defend Curry, who is faster than him, and KD just wasn't able to stay in that. But there was also another crucial turnover that KD had when OKC had a timeout, that led to Golden State getting the ball back, and I think that's what led to the Iguodala foul and the 2 free throws and the whole 9. So Durant, I think.
But I don't want that to weigh heavily on the fact that Kevin Durant is not clutch and doesn't have that in. But what I'm saying is that to me, this is more of a credit to Steph Curry and why we kept saying from the beginning of the year that the reason why we talk about the Warriors the way that we do and the reason why they're where they are is because this team ultimately has the highest basketball IQ of all of the teams in the NBA, which says a lot when you don't have the physical capabilities to match up with these Cavaliers and these Spurs and these Thunders teams that can just overwhelm you and out-physical you. They're outsmarting these teams. They basically are. They're reducing some of the great players that we talk about ad nauseum to fundamental basketball that they just can't do on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I think they're flustering teams right now, and I don't even I'm not trying to discredit your point, but I do feel like what's happening with Golden State is their supreme confidence, and then it's the I guess it's not like the shock and like, oh my God, we're almost there that these teams are facing when they have Golden State on their ropes. That kind of forces them, and for lack of a better phrase, to nut up and to not be able to close out the Warriors when you have them on the ropes. Golden State continues to come. They never waver. They never lose confidence. But these teams start to like, oh my God, we're almost there, but damn, they're making a run. And it's like they make some mistakes that they may not ordinarily make against other teams. Again, Golden State is so good that they are putting that type of pressure and that type of discord amongst some of the better teams out there and even some of the better players right now. So I'm not discrediting that Golden State definitely has a supreme basketball IQ, but I do feel like teams are folding a little bit under the pressure simply because they have them on the ropes and they're just like, damn, we're almost there, and they just can't seem to get the job done.
Other than the San Antonio Spurs, Shaw, let me ask you this: you see the Thunder beating the Warriors in a best-of-7 series?
No, I don't. And
do you see the Cavaliers beating the Warriors in a best-of-7
absolutely
series?
Not. Absolutely not. It's the best team in the NBA.
And that's what I'm saying. Like and we can, again, we're going to be doing this throughout the course of the rest of this year and going into the playoffs. But I just don't want to hear this talk anymore about Steph Curry not being physical, not being. But they need to rough him up. No one's touching him, and he's just walking. They just let him do whatever he wants. I'm tired of all of that. Let's just keep it for what it is. When you have a guard that can create and that can basically dribble and that can do the things that Steph Curry is currently doing, you can do whatever it is you want to do. But at some point, you got to acknowledge where Steph Curry is at mentally and physically. And he has prepared himself knowing that everybody is going to throw the kitchen sink at him, and he still keeps throwing it right back at him. Person throws a kitchen sink, he throws the house at you. What do? Especially on the road, in their house, in one of the loudest buildings, one of the most intimidating places to play in Oklahoma City. To see what Steph Curry is doing is absolutely phenomenal. What the Warriors are doing right now is absolutely phenomenal. And again, you didn't watch it, guys. You need to figure out a way, stream it, find it on YouTube, whatever, go 90, whatever you got to do. Find yourself to sit down and watch a supreme basketball game with basically three of the best players in the NBA right now going at it. Is just an absolute phenomenal thing. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Drop.
Coast to coast.
Time now to go coast to coast, discussing the news in the association. You ready to rock and roll, Mr. Shaw?
Absolutely, man. Let's ride.
All right. If you didn't know by now, Joe Johnson going bye-bye out of Brooklyn now finds his way of all the teams, the Miami Heat. That's a head scratcher there, man.
Well, I mean, not so much. I think what happens with Joe Johnson is he has a great relationship with Dwayne Wade, and that relationship became public the minute the buyout talk started, and that Wade was going to heavily recruit him to come down to Miami, especially with Bosh, dealing with the blood clot condition. So Joe Johnson in Miami seems to make sense. It gives him some playing time. I thought he would have maybe gone to OKC, where he really could have had a significant role as kind of maybe a third scorer, a three-ish scorer, I guess, alongside Ibaka. But Miami seems to be where he wants to play and give the Heat a good chance at making a run in the Eastern Conference.
Definitely. Them can buy we out. So it sounds like out in Minnesota that Andre Miller is going to get bought out. And if he is, there's a lot of speculation that he may wind up going to San Antonio, even though Greg Popovich very firmly shut that down. And then also there are reports out of the Arizona Republic that Chris Humphries will get bought out by the Phoenix Suns, Shaw. So what do we make about more buy we out?
Yeah, it's a great time. I think, these veteran guys have an opportunity now to potentially get on a team, a playoff contender that they can really help, whether that be in a limited role or in a feature role. I mean, obviously, Andre Miller's not going to be a feature guy, but the Spurs are already reportedly going to cut Ray McCallum to make room for Andre Miller. So I think that's pretty much a done deal. Where Humphries winds up, we don't know. Trying to think of some playoff teams out there that might need the help in the front court. Toronto continues to come to mind. I know he spent some time there already, but I don't know if that's a situation where he'd be interested in going back to and trying to give them some depth in their front court.
All right, out in New Orleans, man, it just never stops. I mean, you just basically should just put a MASH report for the New Orleans Pelicans any single time that we mention players. It's absolutely crazy. Eric Gordon, Kendrick Perkins, they find themselves coming back off of injury, so welcome those two. But then the guy that they used while Eric Gordon was gone, and listen, much props to Bryce Dijon-Jones because he came from the D-League, he gets signed to a 3-year deal, then he now gets injured and he's gone for the season. Shaw, I can't figure out what to make of this when it comes to the Pelicans and these injuries, man.
I mean, the Pelicans have had the worst luck, I think, in the last 2 or 3 seasons when it comes to...
They should put a Band-Aid on the Pelicans' beak, like every time for the logo, just for the logo's sake.
Yeah, it's terrible to see, and you never want to see anybody go down, especially a guy like Dijon-Jones who's was just getting an opportunity, and yeah, he was going to have to probably take a lesser role with Eric Gordon coming back to play the shooting guard position, but nevertheless, New Orleans continues to struggle with that, and that's why it just seems like they're not going to be able to get it right this season to make a true playoff push.
All right, out in Denver, Danilo Gallinari, man, just when he was having a very nice bounce back season in a team that actually surprisingly has exceeded some expectations. Great job by Mike Malone. He goes down with an injury again with the ankle. Thankfully, it's not the knees, but still ankle injury, expected to miss some significant time.
Yeah, they're saying 3 to 4 weeks for Gallo here, and obviously Denver isn't playing for anything, but at the same time, Gallinari was trying to get back to a level, and I guess he's proven it for the most part, that he definitely can compete in this league, and he is a very good player in the front court, a guy who can definitely play through the 3 and 4 position and hit some jumpers and even play a little defense in the Mike Malone system. Sorry to see him go down. At this point, I don't know whether or not he'd come back. If it's a 3 to 4 week injury, he might be a shutdown candidate, but Gallo's a tough guy, so he's definitely going to want to be back on the floor.
All right, out in Houston, and we had a little conversation about that quote-unquote backcourt combination between Harden and Beverly. Well, Harden now has made the news, but it's not for the better. Now, there's rumors from Houston that Ty Lawson may actually get bought out, and Dwight Howard, D12, fires his agent, and now all of a sudden there's been leaks about how severe and how bad the discord is between James Harden and Dwight Howard.
Yeah, that really perplexed me when I read that report. All things, with Houston this week. Lawson wanted the buyout, and then he said he didn't. Now he wants to finish his season in Houston. So it looks like that's going to happen. He's going to stay there despite a limited role. But the discord between Howard and James Harden is something that I just wouldn't have known, something I guess you can't know unless you're in the locker room and traveling with Houston Rockets on a day-to-day basis. Definitely think there's more to this story, but Howard also firing his agent after not getting traded, especially with all those rumors, also seems like there's, where there's smoke, there's fire. So I definitely think there's something going on with Howard and Harden. Obviously, Howard has to opt out for this year for Houston, so he will probably not be back, barring something else happening there, which, I guess in this case, you never know. But definitely something to watch if you're an NBA fan. Houston Rockets, James Harden, and Dwight Howard.
If I'm Dwight Howard's agent, I'm probably like, thank goodness, man, I can't keep doing this babysitting job any longer. If you're out in Golden State and you heard about the comments from Oscar Robinson and Steven Jackson, what is up with the hate on the Golden State Warriors?
That's what I'm saying, man. I just don't understand. All these older guys coming in now and making these comments, they're not that good, or my older team would have beat this team, et cetera, et cetera. Listen, and I think it is a result of them becoming the story and all the praise that they're getting for this historical season and not just by as a team, but obviously individually from Steph Curry as well, too. So I don't know. Oscar is a guy who he's a little bit ornery. He's definitely one of my favorite players, even though I haven't ever actually gotten a chance to watch him. But he's definitely has some comments and some things to say about today's players and and again, you kind of have to give him a pass. I averaged triple-doubles for a season, as we all know, but there's no reason for that. But Steven Jackson, he's just talking off the cuff, and those Golden State Warrior teams were fun, but they were never championship level. And he's talking about his teams could have beat this team. That's just the amazing.
When has Stephen Jackson really ever made any sense?
He never made sense in his rap songs. Doesn't make sense as an NBA player, and definitely not as an analyst.
I'll tell you, man. All right, out in San Antonio, man, the big fundamentals continuing to rack up records and statistics, becoming the 5th player in NBA history with 3,000 blocks, and just recently supplanted himself as 6th best all time in the rebounding on the all rebounds list. Saw just impressive stuff again by the guy that we thought, man, this was probably going to be it for him. I don't see any means of him slowing down, not as long as he's got his man Yoda, Greg Popovich, guiding him through the force.
Yeah, they're definitely managing his minutes, and it's a down season for TD. There's no doubt about that, and we'll see what happens with San Antonio in the playoffs, and if they win, I would imagine that he'd be done. He still hasn't made any indication of that. He doesn't definitely not the type of guy who wants a farewell tour if it is his last season, one way or the other. And but he's just kind of chugging along and plugging away, little by little, with these records kind of falling off the board for him, not really even acknowledging much of them. But it's definitely great to pay homage to Tim Duncan, one of the best power forwards to ever play the game.
All right, Shaw. And finally, a little bit more Warriors talk, of course, because we love them so much. We're just so on their bandwagon. But when Steph Curry basically ties the single game record of 3 points made in a game, and then he decides to break his own 3-point field goal made in a season only in 58 games, and we still have another 24 left to play. I'm just saying, man, should we not acknowledge this type of nonsense that's happening right now with Steph?
Again, it's hard not to give Steph all the credit that he's rightfully earned in this season alone. And again, that 3-point record, you knew it was coming, especially the one for the game. He's going to break that record, I'm sure, as well. Probably hit 14 to 15 threes in a game, maybe this season, but definitely sometime before his career is over. And yeah, he's going to end up making 400 threes in a season.
You know what's frightening, Shaw? You know what's so frightening about this is that you look at point differential and the number of times that Steph Curry did not play in the fourth quarter already this year. He would have damn near broken this record probably before the All-Star break.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. And that's why a lot of people said we're concerned about his MVP candidacy last year. Not so much this year, but you're right. It's definitely going to hinder his overall stats and where he finishes in NBA history, because Golden State Warriors, at least,
but that
says, going to continue to whoop.
It says so much about him as a player and what he aspires to want and what he's gunning for. He wants championships. He knows that he can basically, within a small window, do something so remarkable that you would have to put him in that conversation of top 50 of players in the NBA of all time, because of just the way that he is being able to do this thing at such efficiency.
Again, can't knock the guy's hustle one way or the other. He works hard to be as good as he is. You see a lot of the pregame videos of him shooting, him dribbling, and again, just working to be the best player in the NBA, as we currently stand. And let's just one more comment about that shot he made to win the game against OKC. The balls it took to pull up from that from that range, 32 feet. He had 2 more seconds where he could have dribbled and got to a human's range. But he goes at him and pulls up from there and knocks it down and proceeds to do the Bernie and the crip walk and everything else. I was dumbfounded.
He could have pulled up and shot the ball from planet Earth, but decided to shoot it from Asgard. I understand.
Ridiculous. I said the balls and arrogance it takes to take that shot, and I just wonder if he misses that shot. What are people saying? I think the pundits come out there and they're like, oh, especially if they go on to end up losing that game. They definitely say, listen, who does he think he is to kind of pull up and take that shot? But that thing goes in, and you're just talking about it as one of the greatest shots we've seen this season. So there you have it.
Just remarkable stuff. I know it's equally remarkable, maybe not as remarkable as that Steph Curry shot. This great show that we had today, man. I mean, this has just been an awesome show. And I got to tell you, man, it just allows me to get more psyched up as we start inching along. It's just great stuff, man.
Yeah, I agree with you, brother. I mean, it's just quite an array of topics. Definitely has something here for the fans to listen to. Talking about the Blazers, talking about the best backcourts, talking about that great game between OKC and Golden State, and all the buyout candidates out there. A quick editorial note here, before we sign off, seeing that Chris Humphries is actually bought out and is probably most likely heading to the Atlanta Hawks. So, there you go. I don't know what role he'll really play, if any, over there, but just another playoff team that wanted to get some help in the front court. And Chris Humphries is going to go there too. But thanks so much, everybody, for listening in. Again, it's been a great show. I can't wait till we get to the playoffs, and we'll be able to do some stuff with on Rabble.tv. Make sure you're checking us out there, but make sure you're tuning in on a regular basis and checking us out on Twitter at NBA_baseline. Get at my man here at GameFace Lee, and you can get at me too if you like to. I'm at Shaw Sports NBA. Another great show, CL, man. I love doing the show with you, brother.
You acting like you behind the scenes, and when you're the one directly causing most of the madness. Once again, man, we'd like to thank our man David Deckard for jumping on, helping us talk about the Portland Trailblazers. Be sure to check him out. Great guy. Write some great pieces at Blazers Edge, managing editor for Blazers Edge. So be sure to check him out. And we'd like to thank you and yours, man, for the baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys, and we'll catch up with you next time.